Mind Your Subconscious is the podcast that provides you with techniques and knowledge about your subconscious mind, the part of your brain that lets you control your ego and create an extraordinary reality with your thoughts. We invite meditation, hypnosis, NLP, EFT, and other experts to help you master the most powerful part of your brain. Your host is Jennifer Schlüter, who quit her job as managing editor of 22 newspapers to travel the world and work online just after one hypnosis session. A nomad ever since 2016, Jennifer is now a certified hypnotist and helps people transform their dreams into reality. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Mind Your Subconscious. This week we actually have a very interesting guest. He is a IT guy or programmer during the day and a fetish hypnotist at night or in his free time. So what does that have to do with your subconscious? Well, sex has a lot to do with it. It's very mental. So this episode will show you how you can spice up your life and your sex life with hypnosis and with accessing your subconscious mind, actually. Are you curious? I bet you are, so let's get started. Hey guys, I'm Jenny, you know me, and today I'm with Nimja. Nimja?
Hello.
Hello to everybody.
Hello, I am Nimja.
Me and Nimja, we met last year actually in Amsterdam at a hypnosis meetup. Can you tell us how that has developed, how that is going for you?
Yeah, so actually when we met, that was my first time at that specific meetup as well. But the organizer of the meetup and I got along very well. And I've been helping her with that same meetup as it has been going on, because it's twice every month, I think.
Okay, great. And then now can you introduce yourself? What kind of hypnosis are you doing and how you got into it?
All right. So I am Nimja. I have a website where you can find a lot of different forms of recreational hypnosis, ranging from relaxing and helping with study and focus, onto erotic and even into BDSM, things like obedience and humiliation or degradation. They can also find me through my YouTube channel. Of course, my YouTube channel has less explicit content than the website. I think a lot of people actually find me through the YouTube channel rather than through the site directly.
Okay, great. And how did you get into erotic fetish BDSM hypnosis? How did that happen?
So the history of that's actually very simple and at the same time very complicated. I have been into BDSM things and hypnosis sort of in parallel. So when I started doing more intimate things with others, I discovered that I was dominant and that I was into BDSM things. At the same time, my interests in psychology and how the mind works led me into hypnosis and how that worked. So those two things kind of developed in parallel. And at some point it sort of clicked like, wait, I can use the same skills and you can use them there and in different ways. And I've always been someone who's been very curious about what is possible in like all the things that I do. And with that, hypnosis has been a very like interesting journey in finding out the different ways it can be used.
Okay, and can you tell us what is possible or what you have found to be possible? Some things that our listeners may not know?
Well, so it starts out with that a lot of things are in the mind. So things like excitement and arousal and desire, they're all mental processes. So they can be directed or even instigated through hypnosis, especially if they're a bond of trust between like the subject and the hypnotist, and you've established like limits and things you can work with. You can experiment very deeply into even things like orgasms on command with just a snap of a finger, or feeling completely submissive with just a look. Things that like dominants do in BDSM, even just through conditioning. With hypnosis, the limit is really your imagination and the level of trust that you build up between you and the subject.
Okay, and why do people come to you?
Well, one of the reasons apparently is that I have a really nice voice. I guess I sort of agree. The Well, what I found is that when I started out, before I was making files, I was looking at what was out there, and I was kind of annoyed that, first of all, most of the erotic hypnotists at the time were female, because female voices attract a lot of male audience who tend to have more money for some reason. And I found like there was something missing in the field of hypnosis. So I felt that I could add to this. So I started recording some simple files that I put on YouTube and I put on my own site because been having a site for many years more. And it got an incredibly positive response. So then I started developing it and continuing with it, improving the site and the channel itself and improving the quality of hypnosis. I started out with an incredibly low quality USB mic, and now I'm using like a much nicer and professional microphone, so it also helps a lot. Why they come to me specifically is I think a combination of the style of my files is very personal. Every file feels like a session with the listener rather than a session for an audience. And the other thing is that I'm very clear on the content and the effects of a file. So on YouTube, for example, in the descriptions, there's always details of what it will do to you. On the site, you can even filter on things. You can say, for example, I want a file without any sexual content, or I want a file without any BDSM content, which is trivial to do. This, unfortunately, is not as easy on YouTube. It would be nice, but so yeah, I think it's a combination of my style, but also my morality in how I want people to be able to enjoy this safely and responsibly. One of the other things I did is before I started making some of the more extreme files, which go into the fantasies of enslavement or being forced, I made sure that there were reset files that allow someone to undo suggestions. And I just felt it was really important to have those out there before I made anything that would need undoing.
Right. Okay. So what is something that you say, there's no way I will do this?
Actually, I have a very simple rule for this. I will not do anything that will have lasting damage to someone. So, for example, feeding is a fetish that makes people overweight. And while I'm very familiar with the fetish, it is not something that I will make a file for because the damage it would do to the body is like more than I would like on my conscience. The other thing I will not do is any form of hatred. So race or gender hatred or preference, like women are better than men or men are better than women, anything like that I will not do. So I'm okay with making a file that would make someone attracted to women, regardless of their own gender, but I would never make a file that would make them hate men or anything like that.
Okay. And can you tell us some requests? Like, what do people come to you with? Is it okay to talk about that?
Yeah, I keep a lot of the requests because they're inspiration for new things to do. I currently have about like 250 or more suggestions still open, like even after all the stuff that I've already done. It ranges wildly. So not too long ago, I made a very complex fantasy file about a dragon and a mountain, and it was a whole story. And this was based on an initial email of someone about 1.5 years ago who said, "Can you make a file with a dragon?" And we started having a conversation like, yeah, but what kind of file, what kind of fantasy would you like to have? Like, do you want to be the dragon? Do you want to like meet the dragon? And together we sort of like thought of a story and I stored this. And then much later I recorded it. And it can range from that to incredibly specific things as well. I had a person request a file to become aroused by putting on white knee-high socks.
Okay, that's very specific.
That was incredibly specific. So I made that one a little bit less specific to allow people who like the idea to enjoy that too. But maybe they want rainbow socks because they happen to love the 60s.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the suggestions vary incredibly. It can be anything from Can you make something that helps me study, or can you help me deal with loss because someone died? Or actually, one of the most common ones that I haven't done yet is, can you help me get over my ex?
Yeah, that is very common.
It is a very common request, and at the
Yeah,
same time, I'm not sure if I want to do exactly that, because getting over emotions is something that is important to emotional development.
yeah.
So, for example, the dealing with loss file doesn't say you're not feeling it anymore, because that wouldn't help anyone. It's more, it helps people accept that it happened and celebrate the moments before. It's also actually one other thing I am very hesitant with is anything therapy related. So I have a few files that are close to it, like regarding to self-harm or confidence. And the files that I recorded for that, I wanted to do a lot of research for, because I'm not a therapist. So I want to make sure that if I do anything like that, I want to make sure that I can do this, that I don't make the problem worse.
Okay, I see, I see. Okay, so what is something that you really enjoy about hypnosis, that you really love about it, especially in your niche, with your style?
It depends a bit on what I'm doing at the time. So it's very hard to give one answer, because I do so many different things with so many different people. With the last meetup that I ran, which was the Hypnosis Amsterdam meetup, there was a girl there who had difficulty going into trance. And I talked with her a little bit to find out what was her problem. And she thinks very analytically, and analytical people respond to better to different inductions and different techniques than like more fantasy people or more down to earth people. So I talked a little bit about like things with her to find out what would work really well for her. And then I surprised her with something called an overload induction after a handshake induction, which worked incredibly well for her. And afterwards really made her smile like, oh my God, this was amazing. And like that makes me feel good too. Just the fact that I was able to give her that and to give her that simple experience, which was no more than just going into trance and just feeling empty for a moment and then waking up again.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's a very simple example. A more extreme example in the style that I do is is playing with dominance and submission, or with control over orgasms, because orgasms are also very mental. A lot of people underestimate how important the mental state is for sex, but through hypnosis and through a lot of like practice and experience, you can direct this. So you could, for example, prevent an orgasm from happening or make someone overly sensitive. And that is a really like fun tool to play with and to, yeah, make someone incredibly frustrated or feel incredibly good. And the power rush I get from that is of course very nice.
Okay, okay. So when you say overly sensitive, what do you mean exactly? Like
Well,
really fast, or what does it
well,
mean?
it depends on what you want to achieve. It's a party trick, for example, to make someone's hand as sensitive as like the most sensitive part of their body, or to make a stroke of a finger feel almost orgasmic already. So you can make someone like extremely sensitive and extremely likely to orgasm, or you can do the opposite. You can also make someone edge for a very long time. What is also interesting is that hypnosis by itself is just one of the tools you can use for this. Combining them with physical conditioning and with training and like learning dominant language and behavior, you can make it more powerful. Because like this interview is focused on the part hypnosis, but it is important to note that hypnosis is just one element you can use in this kind of play, and it's a very powerful element, which is why I enjoy it.
Okay, great. And when you said it's a party trick, have you done this at a normal party or like at other parties?
I have.
Okay.
I tend to be careful with this because I want to make sure that the person I do this to would enjoy it. I am not a stage hypnotist on purpose, because I don't like the idea of humiliating a person for the enjoyment of others if that person isn't into it. Like humiliation is can be a fetish, but in the end, the experience should be enjoyable for everyone involved. And ideally, it should be most enjoyable for the subject. Like that the audience gets a nice show is nice, but the subject should go home and be like, oh my God, that was awesome. So,
Absolutely, yeah.
so I have done that where I made their hand as sensitive as their vagina, for example, and just by circling on the palm of their hand made them almost orgasm. And that it inevitably gets an incredibly like surprised and overwhelmed response, which is lots of fun.
I'm sure, yeah, okay. So tell us about your day job.
Well, so during the day, I'm a programmer. I work for a big Dutch website, and I currently work in the more ERP direction, which is enterprise resource planning. And yeah, there I do a lot of development and analysis because I work with other people as well. Yeah, so I'm a certified nerd.
So why is it that you're not doing hypnosis full time, just part time, but rather you have still you have a IT daytime job?
I have a full-time job because keeping it, I spend a lot of time on it, but keeping it as a hobby means that there's almost no pressure on it. It allows it to remain incredibly enjoyable because I don't have to do it. I'm doing it because I want to. I don't need it for my income. I get a fair bit of income from donations and Patreon, but I don't need it. I don't need it to survive. I don't need it to pay off my mortgage. It is extra, and that extra allows me to feel different about it. It's no longer an obligation. It's something I want to do. And for the foreseeable future, I'm also planning to keep it that way because it keeps the dynamic of how I deal with hypnosis differently.
I see. Okay, okay. And then what is something that people assume about you that is completely wrong?
Probably many things. The one that comes to mind is that because of my files, I make a lot of different files. And a lot of people don't know which files are my own desires and my own interests and which files I've made for others, even though most of the files are things that I enjoyed making. The thing that they assume the most that I know is wrong is that they think that I am a 24/7, always dominant all the time. And there are people who enjoy this, but I don't. I like gaming. I like just relaxing. And even with people who I'm dominant with, I also enjoy just doing normal things like watching a movie together or just like having a normal walk and a conversation. Not every moment has to be like Mr. Nimja Sir dominating the submissive.
Okay, okay. So, and what is something that you struggle with, something that or the problems that you face in with hypnosis and yeah, just with hypnosis?
Uh, yeah, with hypnosis itself, I don't feel like I struggle with a lot. Maybe there's some elements that I would like to practice more, but I don't feel that I'm struggling with them terribly. The struggles I have are more social in nature. For example, so I run the Hypnosis Amsterdam meetup, and
Tell us about that real quick, because we talked only about one, but you have two actually. So
yeah, well, the other one is not mine technically, but I'm like co-helping. But the difference is that the other person is organizing it. With the Hypnosis Amsterdam meetup, it is a meetup every 2 months, specifically about erotic and kinky hypnosis, which is organized through FetLife, which is a fetish social network site. And I and another hypnotist, and hopefully in the future more hypnotists, give workshops there. While I'm perfectly comfortable giving workshops, the thing that is still something I'm struggling with is being an organizer and at the same time letting someone else give a workshop. So I need to basically shut up and let them do it.
you need not to be dominant for a second.
Well, it's also, I think really quickly and I want to answer quickly because I'm enthusiastic, but it's really important to let someone else just take their time, let them finish their words, let them give answers to people, and also to let them make mistakes. If they are making mistakes, that like are irrelevant for the audience, I can always tell them later. There's no need to correct them in the moment itself. Like I can even write it down if I don't want to forget. And I have done that with one of the workshops where like I just took a piece of paper and I started writing down, so I didn't interrupt the person who was giving the workshop. Because in the moment itself, I don't think about it, but afterwards I'm really like, oh, I should not have done that. The worst offense that I did the last time was where I literally asked, like, do you want me to answer that question? And as I said it, I was like, oh no, that was just the fact that I needed to ask that meant that I shouldn't have.
Okay. Do you remember, like, what was your first hypnosis session?
I actually do remember. The first
And how many years ago was that? Sorry.
I was 15 years old.
Oh,
And
wow. Okay.
yeah, so I was interested in hypnosis like very long ago, but it was very difficult finding good material in it at the time. The local library had practically nothing. So I read what I could, and with my sort of girlfriend at the time, I attempted an induction, and it went pretty terrible. But some form of trance was still achieved, and it was very interesting and educational. So I still got interested in it, but I sort of got stuck with the lack of material. So it took about 2, 3 years before there was much more material and stuff online for me to connect with. So I didn't really pick it back up until I was 18. And after that, it's just been like I'm a very learn eager person. I really enjoy learning new things. So I'm also the kind of person who watches like scientific YouTube channel and things like that just for fun to learn new things. And so as soon as I got more material about hypnosis, I found out where to find more, and then I learned more, and then I met more people online who were into it, and I met like other certified hypnotists that were willing to help me and to train me and to work with me, and that was really fun.
Okay. So you never went to like a school or like a education kind of thing?
No,
Did you
when I started out, the only training in the Netherlands and Belgium was not um, what I wanted to learn because it was specifically for therapy, and I've purposefully avoided this. There's also like I am not a therapist and I'm not pretending to be a therapist either. I'm very clear on this. I frequently get questions during live streams that I do about like therapy issues, and I politely tell the people to find a professional like that can help them with this. So no, I don't. I haven't done any like official study for this.
Okay. And so if people want to do what you do, say, for example, then what should they do if they also, if they don't find a program that suits them or that they want to do, what
Well, so
can
now
you lead them to good resources?
Well, nowadays it's a lot easier to find good resources. I'm still looking for some solutions on some resource problems with this, but the Reddit for hypnosis, so the subreddit for hypnosis, which would be reddit.com/r/hypnosis, has a lot of material listed there. There's stickies at the top with book lists and with information and with like valuable discussions of other hypnotists. So it's a very, very good resource I would have to look this one up. There's one other resource which is really nice. I have all this linked on my site as well, by the way. There's hypnosisandSuggestions.org, which is a more clinical hypnosis research site, but it's a very good one. I actually had some email conversations with the owner of the site because they don't mention recreational hypnosis at all and actively avoid mentioning it. And I felt that it was like I talked with him about the why of this, and I understand it. But because recreational hypnosis has grown so much and is now like a serious application of hypnosis, they will probably like in the coming year reconsider this. Hopefully.
Can you just clarify for the listener who does not know how to differentiate between what falls under recreational hypnosis versus everything else or clinical or whatever?
So The easy differentiation is that clinical hypnosis is what a psychologist or a therapist will do with you. It is, or like a dentist. I know that Elman was very fond of dentists. It is the type of hypnosis that a medical professional will do with you, which is why it's called clinical hypnosis. Recreational hypnosis is any hypnosis outside of this. So guided meditation is an example of recreational hypnosis, and study tapes and things like that as well.
Okay. Great. Thank you for that. And so does your family know what you're up to, and what do they think of that?
Well, to a degree, they are aware of my success because I don't make a secret of my YouTube channel, and the name that I use online is a name on which I've been making like writing and art and stories and music for a very long time, over 10 years at least. So they are aware of my work. I think that most of them don't look too deeply into it, so that they're proud of that I have achieved so much, but they have no particular interest to like dive into the more naughty bits of my work, which
Okay,
is
okay.
completely understandable.
It is, absolutely, it is. Okay, so tell me something that is true on which nobody agrees with you. Maybe something about hypnosis.
Nobody agrees. I don't know about that.
Not nobody,
So
but maybe most people.
yeah, so one of the biggest challenges within the hypnosis scene is the definition of hypnosis itself. The definition that I've adopted is generally considered to be okay, but a lot of people feel that it doesn't explain enough. And that's because I split the definition of hypnosis between hypnosis and trance, where trance is where the like clinical definition of hypnosis comes more into play, and hypnosis is a guided trance. And the reason why that is important is because trance states happen all the time, and with animals, with people, they're a natural mechanism of the mind. Hypnosis is when we use it on purpose, when we're guiding it. And so if we're guiding it ourselves with meditation or with self-hypnosis, it's still hypnosis and we're putting ourselves in a trance. And that definition, like it usually generates a lot of discussion, but it is a very convenient definition for like explaining other things. So
And why is that? Why is the discussion coming up?
so the problem is that it doesn't actually define what trance is or what hypnosis can do. And that's because we don't have a clear definition for this. The reason I use it as a definition is because when you're explaining hypnosis to people, that the important part for us is the guided part, which is what we learn. The inductions and giving suggestions is all the guiding part. And that's the only part that's relevant for like learning hypnosis, because that's what you will be using. To learn more about the actual mechanics behind it, you have to look into trance. And like separating them, I think, is very productive. But a lot of people also don't want to separate them because they're like, no, it conflicts with other definitions. And yeah, like that's the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay. So and what's next for you?
I have two upcoming international like events, one in Wales and one that I can't talk about yet, which I'm sure we will reveal later this year. I have a lot of plans for the site, more than I have time. Probably I'll be busy until the end of the year, at least for my current plans alone. And because I'm a programmer, by the time I'm done, I'll have new plans.
Okay.
Actually, I'm working on a pretty big project. I've been asking my patrons for help with transcribing files because I want to make more of the files available to review without having to listen to them. So in the like it was suggested to me earlier this year, and it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time, but it's very difficult to do. So I've been like basically crowdsourcing it because transcribing 500 something files is not something I want to do on my own.
Understandable. A question that just came to my mind is, do you hypnotize yourself? And if so, when?
Yes and no. So not explicitly. I don't give myself suggestions. However, I am a programmer, so I'm very familiar with flow state, and I'm also a gamer, so I'm also familiar with flow state in that sense. And I'm more aware of them, I think, than the average person who does this because I'm also familiar with hypnosis. It also means that I can catch myself more easily if something interrupts me. I found this extremely useful at work because if I'm interrupted in my flow state, I can store it and continue with it later. This is called context switching, and it's relatively easy for me. I know a lot of colleagues where context switching can be incredibly interruptive.
Can you let us know how to do that?
I
Or how it
don't,
works for you?
yeah, I don't know if I have a perfect plan for other people. As you learn hypnosis and as you learn to experience trance, you learn to be able to recall it. A lot of people use trance triggers with people who they work with, like I will say sleep and snap my fingers and etc. etc. You can also learn to do this with other states of mind that are similar to trance, like studying or programming or gaming. And a lot of people do this unconsciously. So, like high level speedrunners, which is a form of gaming, they automatically go into a trance state as soon as they start with a speedrun because they've trained themselves to do this, even if they're not fully aware of this. Now, the more aware of this you are, the more you can control it. So, if you're interrupted with it, if you're aware of how it works, then it's easier to go back to it by going back to the same like feeling or the same state.
Okay. Okay.
That's yeah the clearest way I can explain that.
I see. Okay. That's fine. So, can you let our audience know where they can find you and what is all on your site, what they can do on your site?
All right. So on YouTube, it is Nimja Hypnosis, this Nimja Hypnosis. And it should be easy to find me there. And if it isn't, I apparently have been doing something wrong. The website is hypno.nimja.com. And on that, you can find interactive scripts which allow you to click through them. So you can do a text hypnosis at your own pace. You can find all the audio files, most of which are free. A few are patron supported, and those are all like clearly labeled. And you can find hypnotic visuals, which are things you can like do on your phone or on your screen that people enjoy for going into trance. They start with spirals and pendulums, but they go into wildly different directions. Recently, I even added a hypnotic game, which is a dodging game where you is it dodging or no, it's flying through circles, I think. But anyway, the idea is that it is a tunnel you fly through, and the tunnel uses like a sort of hypnotic visuals, so that the idea of a flow state is achieved by playing the game.
I assumed you programmed that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I did all the visuals and all the things. The whole site works with technology that I've made because I enjoy doing it. It's been like years of work, but it's so much fun to make.
Okay. Do you use sounds like binaural beats or any other sounds that you also program or no?
So the background music of my files is not binaural, and that is because of binaural beats have a side effect for people who are too aware of them that is unpleasant. So they use resonance to a degree, and I've made the background music myself, but it's just in a standard music program. But I don't use any other sounds during the visuals. I allow people to just use whatever they want themselves.
Okay, great.
And it's actually possible on the site to like select a visual and then go to an audio file and then like watch a visual while the audio file is playing.
Yeah, we can see that you're a programmer.
Yes.
That's great. Everything is thought out and yeah, well thought out.
Everything it looks extremely like clear and clean. It's not the fanciest site in the world, but it's extremely functional.
That's what we need, right?
Well, I've done my best to make it user-friendly. A lot of programmers do have the problem of making things like do a lot, but also be impossible to read anymore.
Okay.
I've done my best to avoid it.
Well, we'll see. The audience will see if that's right. Okay, so do you have anything else to say that you want to say to the audience, to the listeners?
Yes, there's one question you didn't ask, which has been asked to me before, like, why do I mix erotic and non-erotic hypnosis on the site? And why do I show it, like, before someone has to make a choice? One of the reasons for this is I attempt to be sex positive in the site. So there's no enforcement of you have to do something or you have to see something, because it takes one click to take all the erotic content away. But I also wanted to show people that there is more than they might initially think. A lot of people have asked me, like, if I ever would consider making a pop-up when someone enters the site, like, do you want to see erotic content or not? And I don't think I will incorporate that anytime soon. Because showing that it's just there and it is the most normal thing in the world, I think helps a lot with the acceptance of it. Another thing is that while I allow comments on YouTube, the site itself, besides showing people views of like a file, it doesn't show any like usage of it. It doesn't show comments or feedback or things like that. And any feedback given to me through the site is all anonymous. And I've done this because a lot of people live in countries where sex and BDSM are not accepted, and they are seen as like undesirable or unwelcome or even not allowed. So I wanted to make the site purely about the enjoyment of it and not about any social aspect of it. There's still social aspects related to it, like there's Discord servers and chat rooms, and there's plenty of places where people who are into hypnosis like converge. But I wanted the site to be purely about the experiencing of it rather than connecting to new people through it.
Okay, so since you mentioned that, I'm curious, which country do most people come from to your
Well,
site?
the English countries are definitely the most, so US, Canada, UK, and but I have people from all over the world. At the last Hypnosis Amsterdam meetup, there was a couple from Singapore who had been listening to my files as well, and they saw that I was like, they were in Europe for a holiday, and they saw that I was organizing the meetup. They were like, "Oh yeah, we're like, can we come by?" So it was really, it's really fun to see interest into my work from like everywhere.
That is awesome. Do you like meeting people who listen to your hypnosis?
Oh
That you
yeah,
don't know? Yeah.
yeah. I actually meet people relatively frequently, even. So I've been asked this in the lives as well. People can just ask me like, "Hey, I'm in Amsterdam, then and then, can we meet up?" And usually, if my schedule allows me, because I am atrociously busy at times, but I usually say yes, and we just like meet in town and like go walk somewhere or drink somewhere and just have a nice conversation. It varies per person. Some meetups are more naughty than others, but most of them are just social.
Okay, great. So thank you so much for your time. Thank you for answering all the questions and for enlightening us about the scope of hypnosis and especially your style. It was very interesting to hear. So thank you for everything.
With pleasure.
Love this episode of Mind Your Subconscious? Subscribe, rate, and leave a review on whichever platform you're listening. It's very much appreciated. Thank you so much. Catch our next episode every Monday.